Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Our guest is Tom Lauerman, or Farmer Tom Lauerman, a frequent guest in the past on the show. He'll be talking about a new gig that he has. We have a short but sweet hemp news segment, so stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Our first story tonight's from Minnesota. Cannabis freedom has come to the land of 10,000 lakes. The possession and home cultivation of marijuana is now legal for Minnesotans, but that's not all. Officials are also taking steps to expunge tens of thousands of marijuana-related convictions. That means going forward, Minnesotans will no longer bear the stigma of a prior marijuana arrest and the lost opportunities associated with it. For those keeping score at home, Minnesota is the 23rd state to legalize marijuana for adults here in the U.S., and it is the third state to do so far this year. It also joins a growing list of states that have moved to vacate the records of those with past convictions. Nationwide, nearly 2 million Americans have now had their marijuana-related convictions expunged, and we're just getting started. Out of San Diego, California, a history of marijuana use is not associated with an increased risk of either high blood pressure or hypertension, according to data published in the American Journal of Hypertension. Researchers affiliated with the University of California at San Diego assessed the relationship between cannabis consumption and blood pressure or hypertension in a nationally representative sample of nearly 10,000 middle-aged adults. The researchers determined that those with a history of using cannabis for the past year had no higher risk of either high blood pressure or hypertension as compared to non-users. The study's authors concluded, quote, a history of monthly cannabis use for more than 1 year was not independently associated with either increased blood pressure or prevalent hypertension, end quote. A prior analysis of over 91,000 French subjects published in February in the journal Nature reported that both current and lifetime cannabis use is associated with lower blood pressure. Israeli data published in the European Journal of Internal Medicine reported that the use of medical cannabis products was associated with decreases in hypertension among elderly subjects. This new study, Trends in Cannabis Use, Blood Pressure, and Hypertension in Middle-Aged Adults, appears in this month's edition of American Journal of Hypertension. Our last story tonight, employees who consume cannabis during their off-work hours possess no greater risk of occupational injury than do those who abstain from marijuana altogether, according to data published this week in the Canadian Journal of Public Health. The researchers affiliated with University of Toronto, Dalla Lana School of Public Health, assessed the relationship between cannabis use and workplace accident risk in a cohort of 2,745 Canadians. The investigators reported, quote, no difference in workplace injury risk, end quote, among those employees who consume cannabis while away from the job versus abstainers. The authors determined, quote, no statistically elevated relationship existed between non-workplace use and workplace injury, end quote. The authors concluded, quote, study results bring greater clarity to the question of whether cannabis use increases the risk of experiencing a workplace injury, an issue that conflicting findings of previous studies have hampered. The findings suggest that when thinking about the potential occupational safety impacts of a worker's cannabis use, it's important to consider when that use is taking place. More specifically, only use in close temporal proximity to work appears to be a risk factor for workplace injuries, not use away from work, end quote. Conventional drug testing for cannabis identifies the presence of either THC are its primary metabolite, carboxy-THC. In more habitual consumers, THC may be present in the blood for several days post-abstinence. THC may be detectable in urine for several weeks or even months after past exposure. A positive test result for either substance cannot determine whether one has recently consumed cannabis or whether they are under its influence. Requiring would-be hires and employees to undergo urine screens for past cannabis exposure are invasive and ineffective. They neither identify workers who may be under the influence nor contribute to a safe work environment. Those who consume alcohol legally and responsibly while away from their jobs aren't punished by their employers unless their workplace performance is adversely impacted. Those who legally consume cannabis should be held to a similar standard. Last month, Michigan regulators moved to abolish pre-employment marijuana screens for most public employees. Lawmakers in Nevada and Washington have recently adopted similar bans. Additionally, the District of Columbia, plus California, Connecticut, Montana, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island have amended their laws so that many employees are no longer terminated from their jobs solely because of a positive drug test for THC metabolites. This study, workplace and non-workplace cannabis use and the risk of workplace injury, is available online from the Canadian Public Health Journal. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. We have a great interview with Tom Lauerman, Farmer Tom, coming up. I want to remind you that if you are a loved one or looking for a doctor who can help you get a medical marijuana permit, we have referrals all over the United States. Give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Here's Farmer Tom Lauerman. Keep watching and help restore hemp. Good night. I'd like to welcome back on the show Tom Lauerman, also known as Farmer Tom. A long, long time. Nice to see you. Welcome back to the show, Tom.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on. It's been a minute.
It has been. We're now, you've been a pioneer in cannabis cultivation and worked with establishing federal safety rules for cannabis farms. But now you're the environmental ambassador of Natrasol. Can you tell us about Natrasol?
Yeah, I can tell you. Let me start off with what I've been doing lately. You know, this year's been pretty busy for me too. I did an interview with Leafly magazine about the death of Lorna McMurray. She got killed at a True Leaf facility in Massachusetts due to inhalation of dust. And I've been on a couple podcasts. I was interviewed by Leafly, and turned out to be really good. I'm really proud of this because I was able to invite my connections at the CDC, which I still have really good connections with the scientists there. They give me both personal and professional references. And I got them in touch with them because these big multi-state operators, they don't think there's any standards out there and they can pretty much do whatever they want. So there hasn't been proper PPE like masks and goggles and stuff like that on these bigger operations given to the employees. And dust is a big problem.
If you're dealing with rock wool or perlite, or you can destroy your lungs in some of these situations. Obviously, you're dealing with guanos or other substances, but rock wool in particular has a lot of danger.
Yeah, rock wool can be serious. This is in the post growing stage in production, where they're grinding up for pre-roll. See, they have to make the pre-roll material in these cones really super ground up, and it produces a dust. And they've had brown lung and all kinds of stuff in agriculture, and in the hemp industry, we've seen it too, big time, in these larger operations. But what I did is I got him in touch with my friend Dr. James Couch from NIOSH, and he let them know in the article. They actually put in a cannabis workers resource page. So if you Google that and you're a cannabis worker, there's a whole page of resources. But what he was able to do was give them an email address and a phone number. And if 3 employees get together and they think they're working in unsafe conditions, they can get together and send an email or make a phone call to the CDC OSHA hotline and file a complaint. Now, these, after they do that, they can't be fired, they can't be demoted, they can't get pay decreases. So it really protects the workers here. And after Lorna McMurray passed away, her there was 2 complaints filed. After this workers resource page came up, now there's double digits. So groups of workers are getting together and say, hey, this is unsafe conditions, and we're going to file complaints. So I'm really super proud of that. I've been able to work with to help these workers out and show them that there is people out there and there is federal agencies out there that are willing to help them out, you know, during these growing stages in the cannabis industry, because these multi-state operators, all they really do care about is the bottom dollar and the money and the income. You know, we've all known that workers in the cannabis industry, there's plenty of them. Everybody wants to be in the cannabis industry. They're willing to work for less. They're willing to work all these hours just to be a part of it. So I'm super proud of the work that I was able to do there, and bring some, you know, sense that somebody cares about them out there and they just can't be walked on. So, and then a couple of months ago, I started working for Natural Solve. It's a bioremediation product, and they wanted me to be their, you know, environmental ambassador to do what I did for cannabis, but for the environment. So I'm really super excited about working for Natural Solve. There's a lot of great opportunity there, and I really see, you know, cannabis and cannabis growing has always been about, you know, bringing it back to nature. Hemp, all about remediating the soil and stuff. Well, in Natural Solve, the bacteria and the microbes can do the work. They have proprietary blends that they create for different situations, but it can take heavy metals out of the soil. That's a big issue. DDT is a big issue in the soil in Washington. And you can, you know, of course, you use less water and less fertilizer. And water is a big deal right now, you know, the scarcity of water. Even though California had record rains this year across the nation, water and around the world, water scarcity is a big deal. So I really love the product. I tried it out for 3 years before joining the organization, and I saw really great results. And I really didn't know much about all the other things it could do too. So it can, you know, it goes in and kills pathogens in the soil, fungus, molds, that kind of stuff in the ground that can be, you know, sucked up into the cannabis plants. You know, you can also use it around the farm on, you know, cutting down the smell of your porta potties, because you spray it in there and the bacteria and the fungi attack the pathogens that create the smell. And within 20 minutes, it's gone. And it'll start to, those microbes and bacteria and fungi will start attacking the solid waste in there too, breaking it down also. So it's pretty amazing products. It's got a lot of potential. It can do really a lot of things. And I'm super happy to be a part of the team for sure.
I know you have been on the show several times, and we've documented how you worked with CDC. You want to explain to our, but I think we should rehash that.
Sure.
Let's talk about how you first got involved with cannabis, and then how you got involved with helping set these safety standards.
Sure. Well, we had a collective garden in San Diego, and started in 1997. We got raided in 99 at our place called Shelter from the Storm, and basically the Bob Dylan song. And we figured if we all got together, the police were ignoring the new law, Prop 215, and individually going after the senior citizens and the patients who were growing. So we figured if we got together, that we could protect ourselves. And we also learned from Brownie Mary that the media played a crucial role in helping protect patients. And if you had the media around, then you would less likely you would get in less trouble and less chances of them railroading you through the system. So on July 6th of 1999, we got raided by the San Diego Police Department. And my now partner, Paula, was there on site, and she saw what was going down. Well, we all had media lists, and we had the phone numbers and the cell phone numbers of all of the different ABC, NBC News, Fox, all the different channels out there. And and so she got on the phone, and within 10 or 15 minutes, back then, cannabis was a hot story. Anytime anybody got busted, as you well know, the cameras were there and they wanted to capture it and document it. So she did, and that kind of ticked off the sergeant who showed up, and they ended up arresting us. Fast forward, they ended up giving us back our grow equipment. We were very active in San Diego. We would go to the town council meetings with our 4-inch pot plants, put them up on the microphone and tell them how safe cannabis was. As the city council members would roll their eyes back in, disbelief. But when we came back after the arrest, the Mayor Golding at the time couldn't come out of her office because she was horrified. And the headlines of the newspapers, all you could hear is the wheel of the whirl of the wheelchair as Michael Bartelmo approached the stand. And so they ended up giving us our lights back, our grow equipment back, and then they had scheduled trial date in August. So back then, on the high-profile cases, Normal gave us a lawyer, Stan Arkey. I'll never forget him. And right before we were scheduled, we had a big protest in downtown San Diego. And then right before the court was going to get in session, they said, we're not going to press charges. And we're not going to drop the charges, so we're going to have them linger. So in case you get busted again, then we'll come after you double hard. And they kind of set standards in San Diego. They bust them, and then their protocol was they get in touch with the landlords, threaten the landlords. The deal. Threaten the landlords if they keep them going, and so that kind of, once you get arrested, then you're instantly an advocate for the plant, and you're able to speak at different events and all that kind of stuff and help get the word out. So we moved to Williams, Oregon, where we lived for a couple of years. And then from there, I was a farm manager at an organic seed farm. And then we moved to Vancouver, where we live now in Brush Prairie, pretty close to Portland, Oregon. We're just right across the Columbia River. And so I was getting back into it. I wrote a book, Cannabis Consumer's Guide. And I started doing book signings at all the farmers markets back then, and selling my cannabis too. So I had a lot of media attention here in Vancouver. Zane Vorenberg's a good friend of mine. She did a bunch of pieces on me. They did videos, mini documentaries on me. I worked with Como News a lot. So Como News came along and they said, Farmer Tom, will you do an open blast? For people that don't know, it's old school way making BHO. You take a glass tube, you get a can of butane, you put a coffee filter over the end, and you pour it into a glass tray. And then you evaporate the butane out of there. But people were blowing themselves up. Houses were dislodging from their foundations, and people were getting hurt. So it became a big deal. And this is right when Washington State's Cannabis and Liquor Control Board were making the rules, because in Washington, concentrates weren't going to be legal. They were only going to be in edibles. And what I wanted to do is, when they called me, Matt Markovich from Como News called me and said, will you do this, Farmer Tom? I said, yeah, but we're going to give you a 3-hour symposium on everything concentrates. because everybody just thinks concentrates are BHO and is dangerous, but there's all kinds of different types of concentrates. So I brought in all the top. I brought in Joe Wynn to do the open blast. He was one of the best BHO makers, in the state of Oregon. We brought in Jonah Tacoma from Dab Stars. I brought in the whole community. It just didn't need to be the Farmer Tom show. So we had all these demonstrations. We had them there for 3 hours. But basically, our thing was to say, look, if you don't regulate it and tax it, people are going to continue to blow themselves up. To blow gas the old-fashioned way, an open blast, is like we like to call it, the gases can build up and there can be explosions. So it's $100 thing. So if you don't regulate it and tax it, people are going to still be hurting themselves because it's very popular out there. So we did the whole symposium. We talked about bubble hash and water hash and CO2 and all the different kinds, and of course BHO. But we also were having the closed loop systems were coming into play, and I brought in Farmer Joe Parker, who had a closed loop system, and he did the demonstration. And from that, within 2 weeks later, the state changed their mind and said, wow, we better legalize these concentrates or we're still going to have the same issues. So that led into NBC showing up at my farm at the beginning of 2015. There's too much weed in Washington state, which is pretty ironic because it happens in every state now. So this is 6 months after legalization in Washington. NBC News, Jane Wells shows up. I'm on Squawk Box. I'm on NBC Nightly News, Business News Weekly, and they want to know why there's too much cannabis out there and what they can do about it. And so that kind of got the national news attention. And then I got approached by the guys from the union. TJ and the guys from the UFCW who were doing some.
Yeah, the United Firemen Commercial Workers Union.
Yeah. So they were doing some organizing on the whole West Coast, and they picked me in Paulus. So they asked me if I wanted to get on a conference call with these CDC scientists. And so I got on the phone with scientists from the NIOSH. CDC NIOSH, and there was 10 agents from the CDC on the call. And they started talking to me about the process of doing the health hazard evaluation. But I said, well, where are you getting your information from? And they told me, oh, we're getting it off of YouTube. And I went, whoa. There's a lot of misinformation on YouTube. And why don't you come to my farm in August before the October study, and we can give you a 2-day seminar on everything cannabis. I'll have 100 plants here on my farm. I'll bring in the top people from testing and BHO and trimming, and we'll give you the whole shooting match. So they hung out with us for a couple days, and I knew I had one chance, and I knew the large corporations would never do it, and they came to me first because I was part of the original model of cannabis growers. Me and my wife fit perfectly. We fit the model perfectly. So I really wanted to, normalize cannabis. So we smoked around them. We rolled joints in front of them. This is on the educational day. We did dabs in front of them. And basically, I wanted to show them that this isn't like alcohol. This isn't like heroin. This isn't like fentanyl. This is cannabis. It's a natural occurring thing, and people don't lose their mind smoking cannabis. So so I kind of broke the stigma there. Like I said, I'm still really good friends with the scientists there. We call each other, text each other during the holidays, and I use them as, they're just great people. Sometimes I don't believe in what the government does, but the people who work for the government are generally really good people. So we had them there in August for 2 days. And then they came for the official study where they hooked us up with sniffers, and they were on our farm for 3 days. The first day was all harvesting.
Tell us more about that.
They
had sniffers, and the sniffers.
The sniffers picked up the dust from the different types of pollen, and then they did a lot of wiping of surfaces. So they said in the report that there was THC on every surface throughout the whole farm. There wasn't there wasn't a spot that there wasn't THC on. And we also had some botrytis, which happens up here in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, you and I, Paul, know how to deal with it. The first limp leaf, the whole plant comes down instantly because you're never going to outrace botrytis. Or once a mold fungi starts in there, it goes into the stems and just spreads like wildfire. You can lose 9 to 10, 11% of the plant daily. So yeah, they had us there for 3 days. We first day was harvesting, second day was big leafing, and third day was trimming. So I brought in, I had a little crew here, and I brought in some professional trimmers that I knew, and it was a great success. It basically set the standards. It's the foundation and the baseline for all workplace health and safety standards in the cannabis industry, or the SOPs off of my farm back in 2015. So it was a big deal. The first time they tried to push it through, some upper person in the Democratic Party saw it, and they put a halt to it because it was an election season, right? And this is 2016 when Hillary was going against Trump. And the last thing they wanted to look soft on cannabis. So they pushed it back. And it wasn't until I think 2016 or 2017, I don't remember, one of those years it was 2016, because Trump just got elected, and they had to have a new head of the CDC. And the CDC is the one who signs off on all these HHEs, their health hazard evaluations. And they've been done in like the sex industry and, all these different industries. And what the scientists were, flabbergasted by is there wasn't like a group of lawyers there, and there wasn't cameras there, and we weren't double testing everything they were testing. We were, basically I looked at it as an educational experience for the federal government, for them to learn about the basics of cannabis production, cannabis processing. So Trump comes into office. From my imagination, there must have been a stack of these HAGs that they just needed to go and sign. So it was signed the day before. I think it was in April or May of 2016. They signed it, and then they overnighted it to me, AM delivery. So AM in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting honk of the horn of the UPS driver, because we got gates on our farm. We keep everything locked up. Honk of the horn. I go out and I get this big, huge, all of the reports they sent me. So what they wanted to do was get it through before somebody else saw it and tried to put the kibosh on it again. So it was a big ordeal and kind of catapulted my career in the cannabis industry. It led to a lot of open doors internationally and throughout the United States. I'm really proud of the work that I did there. And then the follow-up work I've done with this Cannabis Workers Resource page, and getting the scientists to give a phone number and an email address to really help the workers. Those have really been the highlights of my cannabis career. So, like I said before, cannabis is all about healthy, organic, clean, no pesticides, no chemicals, find the cleanest way you can do it. And that's all it has to do with the environment. So our CEO had seen me, on different news art pieces and stuff, and she goes, we want you to do what you did for cannabis industry for the environment. And so we want to hire you on and bring you on to do that. And I think it's a very noble thing to do, and it kind of is in the same trajectory. When I got into the cannabis industry, it wasn't about money. People kept on asking me, Farmer Tom, what's your exit plan? Exit plan. I'm all, what? Exit plan? I think when I die and they wheel me out feet first, that's my exit plan, because this is my life. This is who I am. I'm not in for short-term profits. I turned down a lot of opportunities in Washington to buy licenses and sell them, and to be cushioned, comfortable. And I said that was cheating. I want to really make a difference, and I really don't care about the money, because with with a lot of money comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of headaches. And man, I'm always happy just to stay on my farm and grow some tomatoes like you see behind me, and my few medical cannabis plants, and take care of my little ecosystem here on my farm. And Natural Solve has hit all the buttons for me. So I think, what's great about Natural Solve is it can do septic tanks, it can do heavy metals, it can clean out porta potties, it can clean up and big agriculture. If they spray Roundup or some sort of horticultural pesticide or fungicide or whatever, you can come back days later and spray the Natural Solve down, and the bugs will go down there and eat those chemicals and break the chain and make it inert. So this product really excites me. And like I said, I didn't know anything about that. All I knew was helping my plants when they were sick, and it was I less water and more flowers out of the deal. So that's all I really knew up until I was introduced to the group and hung out with them for a while. So the product's pretty amazing, and I'm out here helping the environment. I'm out, leaving the world a better place than when I got here. And for the next generations, cleaning up the environment. Instead of us going to other planets and trying to colonize other planets, we need to clean up what we have here. And the Industrial Revolution has left toxic waste everywhere. There's those PFAS, these forever chemicals that we're seeing about everywhere. They're in the water, and they're in the food, and they're on everybody's garments, and they're like everywhere. And that's all had to do is has to do with uh, people not living up to it. In big production facilities, if their cleaning apparatus for these PFASs isn't working, because they're trying to make money for the corporation, and it breaks down, that doesn't mean the production line's stopping. That just means they're just going to flush that stuff down the toilet or ditch it out back in the back, and all that stuff does is leach into the groundwater. It goes into the streams. It pollutes everything. So I think for me, my goal is to always be a cannabis guy. Oh, I love farming and I love agriculture, but I really, really, really love my new position, and to be able to go along the same path with organics and clean food, and shine the light on that microbes and fungus and bacteria can help clean up the earth naturally. See, all these cities and states, they're all looking for big ticket items that they can invest in and put a lot of money into to do the same thing that microbes and bacteria can do. So I'm super excited about the possibilities. I love getting the word out about, uh, you know, bioremediation and using bugs to help clean up the environment and help clean up just toxic waste, everything. So, I mean, like the oil spill in Ohio that Palestine, I guess it was Illinois, but, you know, if we would have got in there with some drones or a helicopter and sprayed that stuff right away, it would start breaking down those chemicals right away. But there's a hard wall between we have that all this lobbying going on by all these big corporations. And they want to make sure that the big corporations are making money. So the environment and toxicity to the soil and the planet really hasn't been their top priority. But we need to make it their top priority, because we're already starting to see the effects of the toxic environment and the toxic food, and this PFAS and everything that's really destroying our country and making it more difficult. So it's an honor for me to put the spotlight on the environment and let all the cannabis growers know. The whole Willamette Valley is filled with DDT and heavy metals. I mean, why can't we promote getting out there in the Willamette Valley in our backyard, Paul, and spraying these fields with the microbes and letting the microbes start break down. I really love that they can, they can spray Roundup and then come back 3 days later and spray our product on there. And then the Roundup chemicals, the glyphosate, is gone. It's out of there. So it's super exciting, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm really looking forward to the future in a day where we can really get the attention of the federal government and the local municipalities and say, hey, there's an easy fix for this. Instead of digging all this stuff out and then transporting it somewhere and then dumping it at a place like Hanford where they've been, dumping radioactive material, those places always end up leaking. Now we've got a polluted Columbia River. And so there's so many things that can be done. And I just my goal now is to put the spotlight on it. And thanks for having me on the show so I can talk about, bioremediation and bioaugmentation and how we can help clean up the planet and the mess that the corporate structure has left us.
So how did you first come across Nutrisolve? You were looking for
Nutrisolve, a few years ago, 3 years ago to be exact, Jennifer Mitchell, the CEO of the company, called me up and said, we want to send you an 8-ounce bottle, And I said, well, an 8-ounce, I go, do you know how many people send me 8-ounce bottles of their product and tell me how great it is? I mean, I've got boxes full of 8-ounce bottles. To really get my attention, you need to send me a couple gallons. And if you send me a couple gallons, then I can really put it to the test. And so we started foliar feeding with it and then spraying it on the ground and spraying it on our fields. And we just saw great results from it. The plants are a little bit bigger. They're healthier. They produce more fruit. Like behind me, you see the tomato plants, half the row has natural solve on it, the other doesn't. And I'm also working with the farm down in Canby. They're an organic farm, and we're testing a large plot of hemp down there. And we're also doing corn trials and things like that. So it's very exciting. I've been doing a lot of video and documenting it. And for people who follow, which you've been on, my Heroes of the Green series, it hasn't stopped. It's my summer season and the grow season. So I've kind of slowed down putting out so much about the Heroes of the Green. But you guys are all my heroes. And, your segments that you videoed me through will be coming up in the fall. Being a farmer, you know how busy it is all summer long. And I just kind of had to put that one aside, but I haven't forgot about it, everybody. And, if you want to go check it out, you can go to my YouTube channel, Farmer Tom's Cannabis, and the Heroes of the Green series. And we've got Paul Sanford on there. We've got, who else do we've got? Don Wershafter. We've got Dr. Sunil Aguilar. We've got Dominic Corva. We've got, who else do we got? A lot of Oregon heroes too. We've got Anthony Johnson and Anthony Taylor, and I did my good friend Jeremy Robbins, who's a part of another group that I'm a part of, which is Cannabis Patients Northwest, Pacific Northwest. And we're a nonprofit that promotes cannabis education for people who have medical needs, who need some information. So, I'm super excited about everything that I'm doing right now. And, I'm enjoying the summer here on the farm, taking care of my plants and taking care of my family.
As the environmental ambassador, do you have anything coming up in particular in terms of appearances or other
I'll
things?
be at the Far West show. It's coming up in August. And then a DFO. It's run by DFO, Degenerate Flame Off. It's a glass blowing competition that I sponsor with Farmer Tom Rolling Papers every year. I'll be there. I'll be there again. And then we're going to be at MJ BizCon in Vegas in November, December, and then right after MJ BizCon's like a world water convention. So I'll be in Vegas for a couple weeks, and that's it for the end of the year. But next year we plan on getting some motorhomes and some vans and doing pop-ups across the country in these hot spots. Like something happens, like Palestine, the oil spills, and we show up there, and we want to be front and center on what's going on, these different hot topics out there, because the rail system, these things break. Warren Buffett owns the rail system now, and these trains are crashing. The big fire we just had this summer up here in Washington at tunnel number 5, that was caused by a train that hadn't had proper maintenance. But do we hear about that on the news? No, they bury it. They don't want to upset the people who own the newspapers or own the television or who advertise on these different platforms. So, I think that we need some big change here in the United States. And hopefully we'll get somebody in the office who's about the environment and who's about big change, and holding the government responsible and holding people's feet to the fire and making sure that the people of America are first and not the corporations. We talked about Citizens United, where the Supreme Court wrote a paper and said that corporations are people and money is speech. And all that did was open up the floodgates, and now we can see the results of it. Corporations have run amok, and it's all about the corporate profits, and it's really not about the people. We've been talking about people over profits forever, but we're really seeing it come to roost now. It's out in front of us on an everyday basis. This PFAS, the toxic lands that we have and the toxic rivers. This is all due to corporations just running unhinged, unregulated, and doing whatever the heck they want for their profit. So they're destroying our world, our planet, for corporate profits. Now, in 2023, where we are now, we've seen groceries up 70%. We're just seeing gouging by these big corporations. You can see, you felt it, I'm sure, like I felt it. The prices for everything have skyrocketed. It's I'm happy to see that the Teamsters Union and UPS signed a tentative deal yesterday to give the UPS drivers $50 at $49 an hour, plus they give air-conditioned trucks. I mean, can you imagine driving one of those big brown heated trucks in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, where they've had double digits for almost 30 days? Like I think Arizona or Vegas, I think it's Arizona, Phoenix, they've had 110 degrees or more for the last 20 days. So we really need to everybody needs to jump on board, and we really need to save the planet for future generations, because there's no guarantee we're going to find a planet anywhere else that's hospitable. And then it'll take years and years and years before we could ever do anything and people can move there. So people need to get out in front of their computer screens and out of social media, get out and enjoy the environment, breathe the fresh air out there, and fight for the environment and fight for future generations.
A mutual friend of ours passed away. Do you want to say anything about Jim Matheson and his influence on the
Oh yeah, I met Jim. I met Jim in the 70s. Yeah, I met Jim in Mexico in the 70s. Where
really?
him and
wow.
down in San Blas, Mexico. He scared the shit out of me the first time I met him. He's this big, huge, tall guy, wild looking, hair all over the place. And, I was like a 19-year-old kid out of California. And, after sharing tequila with him and sharing weed with him, we became good friends and been friends for years. But he passed away a few months back. He was the behind all the music at Hemp Fest. He was really involved with Hemp Fest. He was really one of the earlier great growers, and he was a great breeder. You know, the grape ape strain came through Jim also. That was one of his claim to fames. And he passed. You know, I'm not sure what happened. I just think his heart was broke, you know. He's getting springs ready, and he's getting ready to put in his crop, and you know, there's nothing he can do with it. He lost, you know, he really had a hard time with hemp, and it's just been a hard time for all of the, you know, the true pioneers, the people who have been at it, like you and Jim and, you know, Vivian McPeak and Don Wershafter. And there's a slew of people, you know, and I believe that everybody's done their part to elevate cannabis and to get it where it is. And it's sad to see where we are right now, because I remember in 2016 and 2017 when the suits started showing up at MJ BizCon saying, oh, move out of the way. We're going to show you how it's done. Let the professionals take over from here. Well, we can see what's happening. The stocks are crashing. The whole cannabis market's crashing. There's too much weed everywhere. Nobody's making any money. And the thing I'm happy about is I had several opportunities where people wanted to buy the Farmer Tom brand and the Farmer Tom name, and I just said, no, that's not for me. I want to be free to be able to say what I want when I want. Because a lot of these corporations, they want to they bring you in and give you some pittance of money, and then they put a muzzle on you, so you can't say anything. So I wanted to be free and to be able to do it. We turned down deals, and you know, most of the people who got deals like I was being offered, they've all fallen through. 99% of them, you know, have all fallen through, and it's just been terrible the way these corporations have come in and taken advantage of the true pioneers in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, yeah.
So
as one of those people who was taking advantage of, I know exactly how you feel.
oh,
Let's
Paul,
talk
man,
a little
the worst. Those
how
people.
things when we made it legal, and so there were a lot of different things. Our friend Jim lost shirt, and so did many of us. Talk about how things have gone from freedom to corporate takeover over for you in particular over the past 5 years.
Yeah, it's been horrible. You know, we see it go state to state. These multi-state operators are coming in with their big money. They're paying off. I mean, California had a pretty good system. They learned from Washington and Oregon. You know, I guess for the first 3 to 5 years, they had it built into their plan that no corporation or anybody could grow over an acre of cannabis, making an even playing field for everybody. Well, somebody from Harborside, the owner there, I'm not going to mention his name, but he went and lobbied, took the money from the corporations, went in and lobbied and changed the rules. I don't think he can even show up in his hometown or the Pacific or the Northern California without people trying to lynch the guy, you know, because he really screwed everybody over. And now we see all the small towns, Garberville and, you know, Arcata and all those places used to be booming little towns, vibrant economies, all this stuff. And all it's done by ripping everything away from the true pioneers and the true growers, all it's really done is devastate these communities. Now they're full of meth and fentanyl and just nasty ass drugs. And none of that's making money to enrich the community. So a lot's happening. We're seeing it across the country, and every market that's happening, they're failing miserably.
Like with contaminated cannabis. I mean, you go in and you see what's available at some of these stores, and it doesn't taste right. They don't know how to flush the chemicals out, and they're harvesting. They're contaminated with metals and fungus and bacteria, and it's a shame to see those kind of products out there, and the lack of true industry care about the culture.
They don't, you're right. They don't care. They're all after profits. It's profits over people, profits at all cost. They've been buying off, since Citizens United, things have really gone down. Every politician has a price, and they know how to work the systems. And the lobbyists, they're the ones who write all the laws. They write them for themselves to succeed, and for the environment and the average people to fail. And as long as we have lobbyists, and as long as we have these big corporations being able to influence through their contributions, our governing officials, we're really not going anywhere as a country. It's in a frantic downhill slide. Not only cannabis, but you know, seems like everything is kind of not going really well right now. That you hear that things are going well, but 70% interest, a hike in basic food items, and then gasoline prices are up around $5 here in Washington State. And it's hard for average people to, we should be concentrating on the homeless issue and how to take care of it. And we need to hold these corporations accountable, and make them give some of their profits back, because they're all making record profits and they don't want to give anything to the employees. It all goes to some CFO or the top vice presidents or the upper echelon of the company, and then the shareholders. It's all about the shareholders, all about the shareholders. No, if there's no money out there for people to spend, then they're not going to buy your product, and they're not going to buy your services, and they're not going to, because they don't have the money to. And then they end up in a trailer on the side of the road in Portland, or you name any city across the United States where this is happening, because rents have skyrocketed out of control. Rents to $2,500 to like $5,000 a month. That's huge fortunes. And then how are people going to make it on $20 an hour? I could.
Difficult, very difficult for my family. I can tell you that. But we're hanging in here as best we can, and I appreciate you, leading the way. If somebody wants to reach out to you, Tom, I know you've got your rolling papers and your Pacific Cannabis Group. Want to talk about those? And
yeah, and I'm also working on a project. With Brandon Palma. He's a famous artist. He was the Dope magazine guy. Came up with the Dope hat and all that stuff. He's done front covers for Northwest Leaf and all the big dogs. We've been working on a Farmer Tom's 50th anniversary coffee table book, and we've got some other things in the cooker too. And since I still own my name and my likeness, hey, who knows what could happen down the road? Everybody's so short-sighted, and I've always been in it for the long run, whatever it takes. And like I said, having a super lot of money, it'd be nice to be able to pay my bills on time and to have money. And Natural Solve has provided that, at least, has provided that for me, which I'm happy and super appreciative about. But it would be nice to, do some renovations here on the farm, have a little bit of extra. But so yeah, I'll be at DFO with my rolling papers. I'm doing the Natural Solve product. Go to naturalsolve.com. And if you want me to appear on any podcasts out there, I'm always available to talk about cannabis and the environment, and then the social problems that this greed and the industrial complex has left us here. And you can go to my website, farmertom.com. I'm all over the place on social media, from YouTube to LinkedIn, Twitter, what else? Instagram, and of course Facebook. And that's where you do such a great work out there too, Paul. I mean, it's tragic that you and your family are struggling with how much you've really moved the cannabis industry over the years and really been a force behind it. I really learned a lot during our interview to know that Jack Herrera copied and pasted his famous book literally copied and pasted it on your kitchen table. And to hear your story is super inspiring. And it just, it gets out my core to no end that at this point, you're struggling to make your bills. It's really, I mean, man, it gets me really emotional. And I'm sad that it happens to all these people who put their blood, sweat, and tears, put their lives on the line to normalize cannabis, and then just to kick to the side of the road like you mean nothing is criminal in my book.
I just have to say, since you brought it up, I know maybe longtime viewers of the show know, but that my company was taken over by a group of Canadians. We took it public in Toronto and Frankfurt, Germany, and raised up to $800 billion in value before ripping off their stockholders and pump and dump. But they took the records, 270,000 medical patients records, new group, the very same people, to the Kronos group in Toronto. They brought in a $1.8 billion investment from Altria Group. Altria used to be called Philip Morris. So now, they're the owners of Marlboro Tobacco. They put $1.8 billion into Kronos. Kronos said they lost $160 million last year, and they're only going to lose $90 million this year. But they've taken that now. Altria is invested in a new Israeli medical delivery device. So they're working to bring out cartridges for medical delivery people using some of my medical records. That's the thing that really irks me.
Man, if they raised all that money, they would have thrown you 5 or 10 million, But no, that's not their way.
They wanted to take me out. There's no doubt about it.
And that's horrible, Paul. That's horrible. It's a familiar story in the cannabis industry.
It was all financed initially by George Soros. He put $10 million into the Canadian group after. But anyway, life goes on. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show again, Tom. Good luck with Natural Solve, and people should go to farmertom.com. And is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
No, I pray for our future every day. I pray for all the pioneers that they're able to pay their bills. It's super hard for me to watch like Allison Bigelow and all these true pioneers who had the first hemp stores and everything struggling, can't pay their bills, can't pay their mortgages, on the verge of being in the streets. This is criminal, and we got to put a stop to it. And hopefully the next generation will get out in front of their computers and their phones and get out there and make a difference, demand a difference. That we need a change, a fundamental change at the core of the United States, fundamental change to, help the people and save the environment for future generations.
Thanks for coming on again. Farmer Tom Lauerman, keep working to restore hemp.
Thank you, sir.